Hey, it's Aaron, and today's Coffee in an Odd Car is with the Airomobile. Back in the day, this guy named Paul Lewis lives in Denver, Colorado, and he had a dream. He wanted to build an affordable, safe, and reliable car for everybody in America. Anyway, this was the early 1930s. Automobiles were all the rage. Everybody was doing it, so Paul wanted to do it too. Anyway, he had a basic design in his head. He had kind of an idea what he wanted. Found some engineers. These were Carl Doman and Edward Marks, who together had started an engineering firm after Franklin Automobile went under and they became unemployed. The two engineers were working on an air-cooled opposed piston engine. This design would eventually find its way into aircraft and some commercial vehicles, and it would also be copied by Ferdinand Porsche and become super famous in the Volkswagen lineup. Once he found those two, he figured out, okay, cool, these guys can propel it and build a prototype for me. From there, he had to find a designer. He knew what he wanted it to look like. He had the sketches, but he did not have somebody to do the real work of designing the vehicle. He eventually stumbled on a guy named John Charda. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. Anyway, this guy had designed the Lincoln Zephyr bodywork, and so he was a perfect fit for what Paul really wanted to have happen. So they set to work. Within less than a year, they had a prototype done. So they ended up with what they called at the time the Airomobile. This was a three-wheeled tadpole style contraption, meaning two wheels in front, one in the back. The big difference here was that the engine was also up front and powered the front axle, not the rear. So the rear wheel just floated, it spun. This created a front-heavy design, but because of where the engine was placed right on top of and slightly ahead of that axle, so it tilted the car forward, once you put passengers in between the axles, it evened it out and balanced it almost perfectly. It was reported to be one of the best driving cars on the road. So the engine ended up being a 129.9 cubic inch, 60 horsepower, air-cooled, overhead valve, horizontally opposed 4-cylinder engine. This went to the three-wheeled tadpole chassis I talked about, and it just all came together pretty perfectly. So I saw this car in the Haraz Museum, or the National Automotive Museum in Reno, Nevada. That is the only prototype of this car. So when it came out in 1937, they changed the name from Airomobile to Airomobile because it rolled off the tongue a little better and made it sound a little more futuristic, I think. This was billed as a sedan. It was meant to seat 3 or 4 people. And I guess you could get that many people in there. It's very small, so it would be considered. I would consider it as small as, say, a Mini. It is not a very large vehicle. So Lewis now had his car, and he just needed to find some investors so that he could go to production with it. So best way to do that when you're on kind of a budget: drive your car around the country. That's what he thought, and so that's what he did. He put 45,000 miles on this car in less than a year, driving it around basically door to door to try to get investors interested in this vehicle. Took it to some car shows, did some other stuff with it, and just never found a buyer. And then the war came. So that pretty much put an end to the Airomobile becoming a production vehicle. It ended up just kind of languishing. It was he eventually folded up that company and started a different one that ended up coming out with some later models, but really didn't go anywhere either. And this car just sort of got sold at auction, ended up stored somewhere. Nobody ever looked at it again. It sat and sat. And then in the mid 60s or late 60s, it was the late 60s, Bill Hurrah of Hurrah's Casinos, he found this car in storage, or found the person who owned it, found out that it was available, and bought it. It was in very sorry shape, really fallen apart, but it was 100% intact. So he began a restoration process on it. The car is fully restored back to close to its original color and original everything else. It's in running order now, and it sits in the National Automobile Museum in Reno, and has since Hurrah bought it. So really cool piece of history here. This is a really cool little, neat looking little car, and yeah, I kind of wish it had gone to production. Maybe we would have seen more three-wheeled vehicles if this had come out as a cheap alternative option to the the Model T and other vehicles that were big at the time in the affordable segment. So there you go. That's the Airomobile. I don't remember if there's a company name attached to it. I don't think there is. He had a company, but I don't remember what he named it. I'd have to look that up. It really doesn't matter, because shortly after this car proved that it wasn't going anywhere, he folded that company anyway and started a new one. So there you go. That's the Airomobile. Pretty cool piece of history. This has been Aaron. Talk to you again soon.